Set your mind on fire. Today we're going to talk about layout and how we can section off our content inside of HTML with layout tags, tags that affect where content is positioned. These might not have necessarily a style behind them. They might not even display, but they affect where the content is displayed. So we talked about how we've got these tags, and we can have tags that contain tags. It creates sort of a hierarchy. And how I've got this all set up is I've got essentially our HTML tag, which you have to have, the head tag. This is just so I can put some style code in there, and then a body tag, which is where we start with our stuff that's going to be displayed. And then I jumped into a section tag. This header and footer are just standard. If you're creating a website, you're probably going to have those, especially if you're writing in HTML5, which is what we're going to be doing for all of these tutorials. All of them are in HTML5. Now, I forgot to mention, if you want to follow along with the code in front of you and being able to look at it and see it in the IDE, the Cloud9 IDE, there's a link right below this, so you can do that. So we've got things like these two just regular, these are called div tags that contain some text, and then I've got one set up to kind of display how it works in terms of margin, padding, and border. So let's just look at these two first. This one is a div tag without any styling. Basically, the height of the tag is set to whatever the line height of the text is. So think of it as this is probably a 18-point text, so that the top and bottom of the font-defined height of this text, which is a little bit above and below the text, that's going to be the height of this div. And then it's going to fill its parent in terms of width. So it's filled out the parent, which the parent is just this section tag, which its parent is the body tag, and neither of those have set widths. So it's filled that out, and then I've put a border on it. I've put a border on every div to be black, just to kind of show you guys where it's at. And then past that border would be margin, but there's no margin. And we'll get into that actually with this next one. The next one, we've set a specific width for this div to be. And then I've set the margin on the left and on the right to be automatic. What this does is it pushes the content to the center by automatically dividing the width of the parent minus the width of this div element, and then dividing that by 2 and putting it on each half. So it centers it. Little mathematical formula there if you want to follow along, but basically what you need to know is when you set margin, what I have here is a margin 10 pixels on top and on bottom, and then auto for left and right. And we're going to get into that with CSS, but that's kind of how that works. Over here, we've got set margins and set heights and set widths. So we've got a div inside of a div. Div ID blue, you can see, has filled its parent's width, and it's got that black border on it. And then I set the height to, I think, 40 pixels. So we've got this just kind of is, and it's not really affected by anything inside of it, but I've put this red div in here. And now it has a height and a width of, I think, 10 pixels, maybe 20. We can actually see in here. And let's see, red, yeah, height and width of 20 pixels. And then I set the margin to be 15 pixels and then 50%. So this is the Y value, essentially. On top and on bottom, there's 15 pixels pushing content away from it, or pushing it away from content. It'll push content below it down, and then if it has a top margin, it'll push itself down that much. So we've got 15 pixels here. That's called the margin. And now we've got 50% here. That 50% takes the width of the parent and it pushes the content, that if it's in a margin, it pushes the content to that 50% point. Now it doesn't center it. That's different than an auto, because this doesn't take into account the width of the actual object. It just puts the 50%, it just puts the leftmost border of this box at 50% of the parent height or width. So we've got all that set up. So that is, this point here would be 50% on the x-axis and 15 pixels on the y-axis. So you can kind of see that here. Now we've also, here we've got probably 15 pixels of margin, and I've shown you up here, this is all sans serif, because it's all in this section tag here with the ID of content. And under the ID of content, as you can see up here, I've set the font to sans serif. And once again, you don't have to follow along with the CSS. We'll talk about that later. I just want to show you guys that I can set one section to have one style, and then a different section to have a different style. So this content is in a different section, so it has a different style. It doesn't have a border on it. You know, we can set these styles based on tags. Even if they have the same name of the tag, since they're both section tags, they can have different IDs. So that's one thing that you just need to keep in mind when you're developing an idea for a web page, is you don't have to have, every tag doesn't have to look exactly the same. Alright, so next time we're going to talk about style tags. We're going to jump over to this intro.html, and we can look at it real quick. We're going to be talking about headers, different style tags, all that fun stuff that makes everything look pretty. So that'll be next time. Thanks for watching.